Okay. And we do have it for the 11th hour, if I may. Copies of this thing.
Please proceed.
I make a motion to enter this into the record.
Second.
I think I might want to see it first.
Whether you see it or not, I still want to enter into the record.
And that motion was seconded, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So vote. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Mr. Bowden?
Mr. Bowden, would you summarize your credentials, please?
Yes, I have a master's in urban planning degree, and I was a longtime member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I was actually president of the Rhode Island chapter of the American Institute of Certified Planners for 2 years. I spent 35 years of my career in planning, and I've also spent 10 years in commercial real estate, which I think gives me a special perspective to my planning background. I've been involved with a lot of plans in downtown, big plans, major plans, Interstate 195 relocation, revitalizing Westminster Street, Jewelry District, and others over the years. I've worked very closely as a municipal planner, as a redevelopment agency director, and as a representative of the private sector as they interact with the state, the city, and the federal government in developing plans and strategies to redevelop areas and develop areas. As you can see from my resume there, I received a number of awards, and the firm that I work for, Providence Foundation, has also received a number of awards during my tenure for the project that we have done, national awards and state awards. More?
Can you speak into the mic, sir? Can you speak into the mic, sir, so the public can hear you?
Could I interrupt? There's 2 podiums, if it helps to move the night through, like you could question a witness and he could be there, and we could save some minutes here and there maybe.
If you could just make sure the green light is on.
I thank the clerk for setting that up.
The green light is on, thank you.
You're good to go, sir.
A lot of stuff, Bill.
I'll come get it. Thank you, Mr. President. I would simply like to ask the council to accept Mr. Bowden as an expert in the field of planning.
Your motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I make a motion to accept Mr. Bowden as an expert in the field of planning.
Second.
Clerk, roll call.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Please proceed.
Mr. Bowden, would you please summarize the statement which I have provided to the members of the council?
Sure, if I could just address one comment that I was not happy about, being called a partisan. I went to the planning board, and my first sentence was, I love comprehensive planning. And what was going on in my mind was not good comprehensive planning. That's why I was there, just so you know. So, what I did, a lot, I've done a lot. I've lived in the neighborhood in Kettle Point for 3 years, so I go by the property on a regular basis, biking, walking, car, very familiar with the neighborhood. I obviously reviewed the comp plan on several occasions. I attended all the city council meetings that you've had for the last year. I reviewed all public material involving the 3 submissions that the applicant has made. I reviewed the zoning ordinance, the waterfront district material, the regulations, design standards, procedures, state law. I conducted a windshield survey of properties in East Providence to figure out, okay, what is the status of properties? What's the status of vacancies and occupancies? There's no data source that does that comprehensively. I reviewed all of the major websites of the commercial real estate developers to try to understand the market. I reviewed a lot of materials for the Veterans Parkway, which is a very special parkway. It goes back to 1902. 2007, when the Metropolitan Parks Commission of Providence Plantation created it. I reviewed all their annual reports to try to get a feel for this very important asset that the city has. The only thing I couldn't get, I tried to get it, but I understand I couldn't get it, is the appraisal on the property that you guys commissioned, and you girls, sorry, and that you commissioned, and I understand that that's not public information yet. So I've done a lot of work here, and I produced a 17-page document, and now I'll try to summarize it because I know everybody wants to talk. Two things that I keep in my mind. One is the enormous amount of allowable uses that this ordinance gives the developer. You don't really know what's going to wind up there. It goes all the way from medical research, congregate housing, regular housing, indoor agricultural facilities. It's an enormous use, so you don't really know what's going to go there. It makes evaluation very difficult. Second thing is the neighborhood is all 1- and 2-family houses, except for a small office condominium project. And all of the streets there, the neighborhood streets are minor streets. They're not meant to carry traffic. And on the other side, you have Metacomet, which has very special conditions to it and very special goals to it. So that's sort of the way you set the framework for this. And what my determination will give you other information. I think according to state law, and I'm going to quote, the comprehensive plan must be internally consistent with its policies, forecasts, and strategies. That means when you change something, you have to look at the whole plan to see what else you may have to change. You just can't take one map and say, oh, I'm going to change it. How does that affect all the other aspects of the plan? And it affects a lot of them that are not being proposed to be changed. And I think that's inconsistent with the state law. And I get into detail in my statement. The second thing is the lack of a development plan. The applicant has said, we have no development plan. We're going to get a development plan once you give us all the approval. But how do you evaluate that? How do you fulfill your responsibilities to evaluate that, to make those findings of fact and others when there's no plan? I don't think that the proposed changes maintain the densities, the character, the compatibility with the neighborhood. And I go into that in my statement. I think the site, as I mentioned earlier, it all borders local streets and the heavily restricted Veterans Parkway. No matter what happens there, I mean, it could be an enormous traffic impact, but you don't know. There has been a study that I referred to in here that was actually done as a peer review by the planning department on the applicant's second proposal to put institutional uses there. So and I'm sorry, Zach, but when you said there's no peer review on the planning board, when they review, they do. They actually did one for this project, and the enormous traffic results in the whole area were identified, and what you have to do to fix it were identified. Right now, you don't know. You don't know what the traffic's going to be like. But we know there's minor streets, and we know the vets. And the vets, as I indicate in this document, has tremendous restrictions as to what you can do. You can't widen it. You can't go onto the grass. You can't put traffic signalization on it. These are restrictions that are actually in the waterfront commission's restrictions on Metacomet. It's not meant for traffic. It's not meant for commercial traffic. There's weight restrictions, etc. So I don't think it's consistent with the traffic circulation element of the plan. The economic development plan, which I think is great. The city has really focused on the waterfront. It's focused on the commercial corridors, particularly the old ones that have a lot of vacancies. That mixed-use overlay you guys just passed in, women, sorry. That was terrific. Let's build up those commercial corridors. Let's get rid of all those vacancies and all that unutilized land. I think the land that's available in the Henderson Bridge is a whole nother opportunity. So, I think the plan calls for correct economic development strategies, reuse and redevelop what's out there now, as opposed to creating something that is not developed. Finally, the findings of fact is again a summary that you have to find. You have to find that there's inadequate, appropriate, optional sites. And I went through and I listed a lot in this report. There's probably, just the Waterfront Commission has about, 12 sites maybe. The original objective was 300 acres of redevelopment. That's come down, they've been successful, but there's still plenty more left. There's the Henderson Bridge, as I mentioned. There's a number of others. And even the mobile property, which is a total of 700 acres, I think they just put 200 acres on the property, on the market. So that's a whole other opportunity that can fulfill whatever development needs you have. I don't think you can make that finding. No adverse effect due to traffic. How can you make that finding? You don't know what the traffic's going to be. No traffic studies, no specific uses to generate certain traffic studies. Can you want, and I mentioned this to the planning board, you just want to punt that down and say, okay, someone else will take care of this? How can the public be confident that, my residential streets like Lion Street, that's not meant to be a heavily traveled street. It has too much traffic now. It's going to become a major thoroughfare. Streets like Mercia. You ever drive down Mercia? It's a two-way street, parking on one side, and two cars are going up against each other. It's a one-way street. That's projected under the traffic study that's been done to increase traffic. I can go on and go over the study, but there's just so many people here who want to speak. I think that's one thing that surprised me. Let me just make a few other points, is that the direction that the City Council gives to the Waterfront Commission is so general, unlike the direction you've given them in the past on specific areas. And I just want to get to that section there. Just give me a minute. When you look at Kettle Point, where I live, the direction to the Waterfront Commission was very specific. It wasn't like, hey, here's 20 different...
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got page numbers, so I want to make sure I reference the right one.
I gotta find that one.
Page 6, maybe?
Could be.
6 and 7.
Thank you.
Looks like
6 and 7, maybe?
Oh, that's, sorry.
Talking about the Parkway and area streets.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe page 4, number 1.
That's like 14?
Page 4, number 1.
Yeah, page 4.
Yes, okay, got it. So, if you look at page 4, Kettle Point, what was the direction that you gave to the Waterfront Commission? It says medium density residential with ancillary commercial uses including restaurants, clubhouses, marinas, and limited retail. That's what you gave to them. No indoor agriculture, no medical research, no corporate rentals. Very limited. The one right across the street, which is the Chevron property in the district, is even more specific. It says, it shall be medium-density multi-family residential along the Veterans Memorial Parkway, with commercial retail uses at the lower levels of the park, of the site, along with marinas. They're respecting veterans. They don't want commercial activity on veterans. Pretty specific guidelines. You're not giving the Waterfront Commission any guidelines. What you're telling them is, you have a lot of uses that you can put on that land. There's no specific design regulations for Metacomet since it's new. Metacomet has 27 design guidelines. Chevron has 27 design guidelines. Right now there is 0 design guidelines for a proposed Metacomet. It's just the general guidelines of the Waterfront District. So I think it's you guys are sorry, council people, you are in a very tough position because there's not a lot of information to make determinations, and then there's not a lot of direction as to what you want to see in that parcel of land, which is so important. How do you want to see that develop? Right now you're saying almost anything goes there. Certainly not warehousing, not light manufacturing, not heavy manufacturing, but everything else goes there. Is that the decision you want to make? Don't you want to say, how can we make this the best? I know that's the way Zach wound up. How can we make this the best for the community? A lot more work should be done. We do have a comp plan, a renewal going on now. That's going to take 6 months. 6 months from now, you'll have a whole new comp plan. Shouldn't it apply that? You have a new ordinance that talks about more requirements when you shift land from open space to others. A lot of traffic requirements. That was introduced. Shouldn't we go through that? Shouldn't you evaluate all of the different aspects of changes that may be necessary in a comprehensive plan by changing one map? Attached to this, I have 4 maps. That map that you're proposing to change is not in conformance with 4 existing maps in the comp plan. Circulation, economic development, the Veterans map, Veterans Parkway map, and the commercial corridors map. So it's inconsistent. So I don't think you want to be inconsistent in your comprehensive plan by approving this. I just think a lot more work is needed. I won't take any more.
Mr. President, may I ask what you... Oh, I'm sorry, you go ahead first. Just one quick question, maybe you can help me with this question, and respect with the comprehensive plan, because I've been hearing this over and over and over again.
Sure.
The comprehensive plan, our comprehensive plan that's currently in place has not been certified by the state. The state does not acknowledge our comprehensive plan. Where does all this fall into?
Well,
With the comprehensive standard?
I think from, correct me if anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, the comprehensive plan still has standing with the city council and the other bodies in the city. There's one issue that I think statewide planning had, is a pretty narrow issue that's never been resolved, and I don't remember what it is. They haven't even certified the plan. If in fact there was some kind of state investment that needed the conformance with the local plan, you might run into trouble there, because it hasn't been certified. But I think, the local plan is the local plan. It's still the ruling body for you.
So with that being said, then you don't need state certification or state approval then? On a comprehensive plan, is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, you do, and why that hasn't been resolved, I don't know. You have to ask the planning department. But it still is the legal document for comprehensive planning purposes for local action.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Councilman,
President,
may
may
I
I
have a question for you as well?
Mr. Bowden, the memo that the planning department captured the outcome of the 29 June planning meeting. They referenced a host of waterfront commission design guidelines. They gave us a bulleted list of 14, saying it includes, so I'm assuming it's not all inclusive. But they referenced things like buildings having setback of 0 to 15 feet from the right of way, street trees being planted a maximum 60 feet on both sides of streets, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole host of these. Are you saying that those design guidelines do not and would not apply to the Metacomet sub-district?
Now, if I understand what you're talking about, Councilman, those are probably general guidelines for the whole waterfront district. And then under those, each sub-district has their own guidelines. And what I'm saying is right now, Metacomet, because it's new, right, it doesn't have those guidelines. So you just don't know what those guidelines may be. And those guidelines don't have to come back to the council for approval. They're approved by the waterfront committee.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Just a clarification, you were speaking of Veterans Parkway when you were talking about traffic, and I think you misspoke and said Metacomet.
I'm sorry, Veterans of the World.
Or was this Veterans Parkway you were talking about?
Yes.
What are the restrictions on the Parkway, just briefly?
Yeah, well, there are a number of restrictions that the Waterfront Commission, see, the Veterans Memorial Parkway is already in the district. They go across the street from the Chevron property and all other properties. And in there, they say, requires, this is the commission's restrictions, right, currently, requires retaining the existing right-of-way in its entirety as undeveloped and green space.
Excuse me, you say it's in the district, the waterfront district?
It's in the waterfront.
Already?
district Already.
Okay.
Mostly as part of the Chevron district, because that's what is across the street. So that part is already in there, and they have regulations pertaining to those.
Can they make exceptions without coming to the council?
I think these are design guidelines for that district. I don't think those design guidelines have to be approved by the council.
So they could waive the guidelines?
Yes. Now, the state comes in because it's part of the scenic board. It's a scenic drive, so the state has a scenic board, and they have, and I put it in here, all the requirements that you have to fill. And if there's an adverse finding, then the state has to go through a long mitigation process to try to make sure that the scenic, the historic, the cultural values of that very important parkway are not compromised. But in addition, on the waterfront commission, it says traffic signalization shall be prohibited. Development of a scale that would trigger the warrants for traffic signalization. That would not trigger the warrants for traffic signalization. Roadway widening discouraged. The weight limit is noticed. You know, you can't have a truck except for local deliveries over 5,000 pounds, which is, you know, basically a very small delivery truck. You don't want to see commercial on that road. It's not supposed to be on that part.
There were also, as I understand it, state restrictions that date back to the time when the Parkway was established.
Well, the Parkway was built about 1910 or 11, and there were speed requirements, and also, it's interesting to read their annual reports because they're always asking the East Providence police to make sure that no trucks and commercial traffic are on that parkway, even 100 years ago. And so it's never met with that kind of traffic. And then the speed is always an issue. You know, what is it, 30 miles, I think, an hour, and, you know, everybody, that's always an issue. So I don't know the specific regulations go back to the 19 teens.
They do. You're familiar with the Metro SAM that was put together by the Coastal Council?
Yes,
What
yes,
do you consider the significance of that? You're a planner, that's a planning document.
right. I actually worked on that plan, but more in my capacity as a not-for-profit planner in downtown. And, you know, we wanted to create that plan to make it manageable so that people could develop land and still have plenty of room between the water and folk walkways and all. I mean, the significance, a lot of work has gone into that, and the significance of it is enormous. I mean, it's really basically, we're going to protect our environment, protect the waterways, give people access to the waterways, and you know, hopefully help us get through what we have to get through in the next couple of decades and beyond.
How does the Coastal Council look upon changes in the waterfront such that it would violate the SAM?
That's really not for me to say. I think that's beyond what I looked into, and that's for the CRMC and their staff to really.
But to your knowledge, CRMC has not weighed in on allowing variations on the waterfront.
On variations, I don't know, Bill. Yeah. I didn't know that you have to go through that process, that's for sure.
Mr. President, my suggestion is that rather than listen to lawyers, you'd be well advised to listen to your citizens who would really like to talk. So I think
Council President,
we're going to have to be...
we are entitled to, you did accept those exact rights for witness, and we are entitled to.
Well, I'll let Attorney to finish off, and then you can. Attorney, please finish off.
I would like to reserve, if I could, because I would like to hear what the comments are, and especially the questions of the council.
Mr. President, I'm just,
Before we do so.
Mr. Bowden, one more question.
Yes.
And as an expert witness, and you say, well, you mentioned the restrictions on Parkway, you live in Kettle Point, so I assume you like that area.
Yeah, very much.
All of that was approved by Coastal and all of these other restrictions, and
I moved in when it was already being developed, so
Right.
I'm not familiar with the approval process.
the fact that it's there.
Yeah, sure.
Right, so
Yeah.
it got approved, and you like it.
Yes, and it is primarily residential. It doesn't generate the traffic other than, you know, the big office building that a
Right.
commercial development would generate, particularly a retail.
Excuse me, you said it doesn't generate the traffic over there?
I'm saying it doesn't generate the amount of traffic
The
that
amount of
a
traffic.
commercial, retail, office, purely development would, you know, or, you know, it's mostly residential.
Council?
Council President, first off, Council, we have no objection to reserving. I noted that, and that's absolutely fine. I would expect that. I will keep this super simple, but he is accepted as an expert, so I would like a brief cross. Might we share Mike, Dan?
Go ahead.
So in addition to me knowing this expert, he also knows that my firm was one of the participating law firms that permitted Kettle Point. And I do want to ask a question that goes to credibility of the testimony that was just given to this board. Mr. Bowden referred to his own report, which is already accepted as an exhibit, the reference of Kettle Point, and he used this reference of Kettle Point in Roman numeral 1 of page 4 to suggest that you gave strict minimal use decisions, if you will, guidance, if you will, to the Waterfront Commission. I am pulling from...
Page 4, we said.
Page 4. I'm pulling from the planning report that was given to this council, and it's nothing fancy, it's just your ordinance, but letting you know where I got your copy of the ordinance comes from a document in the record. One of the things that Mr. Bowden, you said was, you know, for example, that doesn't include medical offices, and I agree, your excerpt does not include medical offices. Can you tell me on the use table for Kettle Point Subdistrict what it permits for medical offices?
It does.
Okay. The truth is, that the actual guidance to the Waterfront Commission is the table, the zoning table that was attached to the ordinance. This is probative, but precisely what uses are permitted are the use table, is that correct?
But the other material's right in the zoning ordinance, giving guidance as to what the...
I agree, but as a
Council would like to
planner,
see
you
that.
know, if I show up, it doesn't say medical office, like you just testified, and if I produce a medical office, I can do it, right? It says a Y, it's not even a C.
Right.
Okay. Do you also agree that I also agree with the planner, that Kettle Point did get additional guidance given, just like the 20-some-odd conditions we proposed to accept should the council approve? You, Bradley, said this waterfront district commission. Do you also agree that the Metacomet sub-district is very similar in what's permitted to 1, 2, 3, 4 other sub-districts?
I haven't done that analysis.
Okay, would you agree?
What I do know is that what is being permitted in the Metacomet district, what is being permitted in the Metacomet district is far more permissive than what is permitted in the Kettle Point and in the Chevron.
Can
There
we
are so
agree that
many
there are
more
six-
new uses.
There are 6
additional
sub-districts,
uses.
correct?
Right.
There's 6 sub-districts, okay. We testify that 4 are not. So I know you've picked
I'm
out.
testifying that the 2 closest to Metacomet,
You also testified the medical office wasn't permitted. My last question.
I did not testify that. I took that out of the
Sit
zoning
down.
ordinance.
Sit down.
Sit down. Public comment. Let's
All right, can we
go.
keep it down?
All right. To recite the testimony, you said that wouldn't include such a medical office building. We had a reporter here. You also testified, or were starting to question by counsel about the CRMC. You said you also testified referred our file that was submitted with the city, correct, for application for this ordinance?
Right.
Did you see a preliminary determination from CRMC?
I know you've had discussion with him, sure.
No.
I didn't see, I don't remember the preliminary, doesn't mean you didn't have it.
It's in file. It's in
Okay,
file, was submitted to
that's
planning.
fine.
Okay, so for your own edification, if you do take a look, it had no
Okay.
adverse findings.
And I also said that the decision for that had to be CRMC.
And you know,
That's what I said.
Mr. Bowden, in fairness to you, I agree, but
Okay.
your counsel posed it to you, so I just had to cross. I don't have any further questions, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you both. Okay, we're gonna open this up for public comment at this point in time.
Can I thank you very much for your patience?
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. President. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess at this time and then we'll start public comment. 5 minutes.